In this report, a fresh batch of uplifting government lies, which is, of course, why they've exempted themselves from misinformation legislation. It would be a hilariously uplifting own goal if they legislated and then were forced to cancel themselves. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. Unless you've been spending the past few weeks dead from the neck up in the lead up to the end of financial year, you would be at least somewhat aware of the metaphoric TP in Energy Minister Christopher Bowen's trousers, following the legislation of his prized ute tax, or new vehicle efficiency standard, as it is probably still known within the masturbatory fantasy pavilion we know as Parliament House. The Minister for Sucking Up to Qantas, Catherine King, is similarly enamoured over the ute tax, metaphorically also, one presumes, and that is a real victory too, but now that I think about it, only for equality. This video is brought to you by Olight, the manufacturer of the best torches ever, at least the best I have ever used. They're rechargeable and tough and bright, everything you really want in a torch, essentially. And the sale is on tonight, at least it is for May. So if you're burdened by too much choice, let me just speed date you through the best options. And this is only going to take like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that tops. The best for the pocket is the Warrior Mini 3. It's awesome, and I can say that with some conviction because I can't kill my Mini 2. And dude, I have tried many, many times. My best attempts, and still it resists. I use it every day. It's so freaking useful out in the field or here in the Fat Cave. Now, if there's a zombie apocalypse, get yourself a Warrior 3S. It's kind of the same as the Mini, just bigger and tougher and brighter. The best torch for your workshop or in the car, in my view, you cannot beat the Swivel. Broken down in the middle of the night, it's a godsend. There's a few specials as well this month. There's the Rubato 4 and Sentry L1 folders, which are great for camping. The Sentry L1 is essentially a folding cleaver, so kind of seeing Jamie Oliver meets Survivor somewhere out there on the Birdsville track, perhaps. In light of recent events, however, I would be double-checking the local life Nors and also the local... God! Picked a great week to stop sniffing glue, didn't I? The local knife laws before carrying one in public. Dude. Both more than adequate for defeating a swarm of boxers from Amazon, I'd suggest, should you be attacked by one at home. And finally, the O-Lantern Stretch, which is great for camping. Also, or power failures at home, now that I think about it. It's got warm and cool colour temperatures, variable brightness. Essentially, it's a very versatile lantern with giraffe-esque proclivities. Links in the description to all of this. The sale is only a brief one this month. It ends Friday at midnight. I'll put a code in the description. Also, you'll get 12% off after that if you miss it. But you should be subscribed, dude, with the bell nailed. Come on. Olight is one of my favourite brands. They are, as I said, the best torches I have ever used. Back to ambient government ute tax dipshittery now. Instead of being an open, transparent source of information about exactly WTF this new fuel efficiency standard is and how it might affect you and me, the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and Arts, hope their business cards are horizontal, appears to be running what I can only describe as a disgraceful misinformation campaign, mainly designed to get the government re-elected. And here was me presuming that government departments were supposed to be above acting like a complete bag of dicks in this way. New Vehicle Efficiency Standard. The Australian government is establishing a new vehicle efficiency standard to save you money at the Bowser, bring cleaner cars to Australia, and give more choice to Australian consumers. This is actually being done to reduce CO2 and thereby get us to the mythical paradise state of net zero, which is obviously why they're not saying that. Quote, to save you money at the Bowser. Which one of those statements do you suppose might buy them just a few more votes? What a new vehicle efficiency standard means for Australians. Without a new vehicle efficiency standard, Australians can't access the range of fuel-efficient vehicles consumers in other advanced economies enjoy. A standard will help by saving you money at the Bowser. Jesus Christ, why don't you trowel it on, you frickin' pelicans? Saving you money at the Bowser. They are putting it this way because charging car makers a penalty to sell you a ute, which is the truth of the matter, might actually get Mr. Potato Head elected. And only starchy old him wants that. This piece of disgraceful bullshitting targets anyone who thinks that government should be doing more to ease the burden of the bills, otherwise known as cost of living pressure. And there's nothing a bogan resents more than buying petrol. Out there, ambient bogan hates buying petrol. It's a frickin' conspiracy. Just ask them price of petrol. The truth is, this policy does absolutely nothing to reduce the cost of fuel for the median Australian. Even if there's a miracle and we see a flood of efficient new cars introduced as a result of this bullshit fuel efficiency standard, the only way it will save anyone money at the Bowser is if they drop 30 grand or more on one of these new magic cars. This is, of course, an entirely fucked up economic idea when you think about it. The proposition is absurd. Spend $30,000 plus to start saving money at the Bowser. It's freaking ridiculous, dude. Even if you have a spare 30 grand or more to spend, which ambient Aussie bogan battler typically doesn't. Our model will deliver over $95 billion in fuel savings to Australians by 2050. Jesus Christ. Get a proofreader on us, dudes. But still, that's awesome, is it not? Well, I guess it sounds awesome, but just think about this for a sec, okay? That is a quarter of a century away. $95 billion, nearly $100 billion in 25 years. So it's really only $4 billion a year, roughly, on average. And we drive 200 billion kilometres every year. Actually a bit more, but hey, let's call it 200. So a $4 billion saving every 200 billion Ks is, Jesus, that's difficult, isn't it? 4 divided by 200, that's, think about it, take away the number you first thought of. It's, come on, are you there yet? 2 cents per kilometre. 2 cents a K. That's the government working for you, dude. 2 cents a K. Average Aussies drive like 300 Ks a week, okay? That's $6 a week. I can feel it. I can smell it so close. Imagine if the boss called you in and said, dude, I'm giving you a $6 a week pay rise. You'd be on your knees in a heartbeat to express your gratitude, would you not? And it's only 2 cents a friggin' K if you trust those fuckers not to cook the books, which, frankly, I do not. So there's that. This is simply not a cost of living countermeasure, not in any rational way. So it's truly just shameful misrepresentation by a government department, which should be above all of that. This new vehicle efficiency standard is actually a system of carbon dioxide emissions fines for car companies if they breach mandated limits, which gets tighter every year for the next several years. In other words, it's a carbon tax, and car makers will pass the cost on to you, because the consumer ultimately pays for everything. That's how economies work. The government doesn't want to put it to you like that either, frankly, for fear of alienating all those nutbags out there whose confirmation bias has been weaponised on Twitter and Reddit and Facebook, whatever, allowing them to join the climate change denial club. And anyone can join, dude. All you need is a low IQ and complete scientific illiteracy. Membership is open, therefore, to almost all Australians. In other words, it's up to you, though. It's not mandatory. Pro tip: climate change is real. Humans are causing it. It's entirely related to our CO2 and other related gas emissions by us because of our developed society, and we really, really need to do something effective about it. Keyword: effective. So, how effective is the new fuel efficiency standard likely to be when they deploy it and it's in operation out there among us? Our model will deliver cumulative abatement of 321 million tonnes of CO2 by 2050. Sounds like rather a lot, doesn't it? But it's actually fuck all in context. I get that 321 million tonnes is a big number, but Australia's annual emissions of CO2 equivalent gases are roughly 500 million tonnes. That's every year, not over the next quarter of a frickin' century. So this standard, if it works as promised, will deliver about 7 months of CO2 savings across a quarter of a century of total onshore Australian emissions. About 300 million tonnes against 12.5 billion with a B. This is like taking a toothpick to a sword fight, like pissing on a bushfire, whatever. It's not likely to be effective as a climate change countermeasure. It's even worse when you consider our addiction to the revenue from exporting hydrocarbons, because we are fair income on crack over that. In relation to how our economy rolls, we are the number 3 hydrocarbon exporting nation on Earth. And we are number 1 in coal, and by a photo finish, number 2 in cryogenic methane, like LNG. Let's just compare that saving, right, to our coal exports, that 321 million, to what we export in coal. According to Geoscience Australia, we export between 60 and 70 million tonnes of coal every year, and it is increasing reliably by 2.5% every year over time. There is no reduction in coal exports. That's bullshit. It's good for the economy. It's great for the economy. In fact, it's great for civilization and great for pulling impoverished people in developing nations out of poverty. It's just bad for the climate, which is why this is such a hard problem to solve, frankly, because it's mostly a good news story, but where it's bad, it's like really, really bad. About half of those coal exports are metallurgical coal, which is used for steel making, and the other half is thermal coal, used for, boiling water to spin turbines to make electricity. Now, inconveniently, and this really is the scientific illiteracy part that I mentioned earlier, every tonne of coal, when you burn it, it produces about 2.4 tonnes of CO2. This is a scientific fact. Now, people always tell me I'm wrong and I've made it up or got it wrong or something in the comments when I claim this. A tonne of coal, 2.4 tonnes of CO2. Dude, if that's you, I'm not wrong, but I can tell that you did not pay attention at school if you think that. See, the C, the capital C in CO2 comes from the coal, which is mostly carbon, like elemental carbon. And the O2 in CO2, have a guess where that comes from, dude. It comes from the air that you suck in to burn the coal. And the O2 happens to be somewhat heavier than the C, so it's all quite scientifically robust and well thought out, and combustion is one of the most studied freaking processes on Earth, and a tonne of coal makes 2.4 tonnes of CO2. Get used to it. Which you would realise, but only if you had been conscious during year 11. It's the same sort of story with the liquid fuels and, of course, the gases like methane and propane and gases of that nature. The exact ratio changes just a little bit, but it's about 1 kilo to 2 and a bit with all of them. That's how hydrocarbons roll when you burn them. Now, I just modelled our coal exports from now until 2050, and I used the 2.5% growth per year that Geoscience Australia says is reliable. Now, the total amount of coal we will export in this time, like over the next 25 years, is going to be about 15 billion tonnes. And we have virtually endless coal. There's no problem supplying that much coal to the world, right? And that 15 billion tonnes is going to release about 36 billion tonnes of CO2, right? Wrap your brain around that, 36 billion. And these senior government masturbators and their department are walking around like the Cheshire fucking cat over abating 321 million tonnes over the same time. Like, Jesus Christ. This abatement is 0.9% of the emissions our exported coal is going to create. In other words, it's nothing. It's a fuck all burger, dude, with the lot, right? There's no plan to reduce coal exports. The economy would crumble if we did that. There's no scalable alternative to metallurgical coal, and if you don't have nuclear energy, you cannot have a stable electricity grid unless you burn coal. Because, engineering. It's just not possible. There are rock-solid technical reasons that underpin those two claims of mine. So coal is here to stay. In this context, tailpipe emissions of CO2 from light vehicles like your Hilux, they don't matter. They are completely insignificant. This so-called new vehicle efficiency standard, which is really a scheme of CO2 fines for car makers, is another hyper-authoritarian left-wing total dick move which will curtail personal freedoms over time because the government knows best, dude. And you've always wanted it to be a de facto parent, haven't you? And although the savings on these web pages and PDFs from the department, they sound monumental. 95 million bucks and 321 million tonnes of CO2 over the next quarter of a century out to 2050. When you view these purported benefits through the prism of the facts and get a sense of proportion, it all reveals itself for the giant fucking nothing burger of climate ineffectiveness it truly is. Catherine King, Chris Bowen, the Department of Infrastructure, etc., you should all be hanging your effing heads in shame.